Liz here, and today I have a fun spaced themed card to share with you all. I'm going to be focusing mainly on the Out of This World stamp set along with a couple of extra dies. I'm going to be using the Ocean Waves dies as well as the Starry Skies dies. And then in this video I'm going to show you 2 ways to create a galaxy background just using lawnfawn inks. So I'm going to be using 9 different colours today. I'm going to be using Blue Jay, Juice Box, Sugar Plum, Deep Sea, Carrot, Plastic Flamingo, Sunflower, Mermaid and Black Licorice. And the 2 ways I'm going to be using these today is some watercolouring and also ink blending. These are my 2 favourite ways generally to make a galaxy background, but I've never done it using just lawnfawn ink, so I thought that I would give that a try today and sort of get the most out of your ink pads. So I've taken a piece of slick surface, so this is just a chopping board, and also a piece of Tim Holtz watercolour cardstock, and I'm just messily blending on some colour. So I first started with Plastic Flamingo and then Sunflower. Now I'm going in with Carrot and I am just blending some of the colour on here. So I'm just being super duper messy with this. I'm just sort of adding pops of colour here and there, and you can see here that when I add in the purple, so this is Sugar Plum, and I go ahead and blend this on the edge of the cardstock in with that yellow, it sort of creates a muddy colour, which generally I wouldn't like this on a card at all, but because it's a galaxy and you're not really going to see all of the colour underneath or really how it blends, I wasn't really bothered with it. I don't mind how it sort of blends if it doesn't blend properly. If you've got like lines from your ink blending tool, it is not a problem because you're not going to see this in the finished product, and if you do, I think sort of all those imperfections really add to the look of a galaxy. So I just finished off with Juice Box and also some Mermaid for a pop of light blue. And now I'm going to go and start going in with my darker blues. So I'm first starting off with Blue Jay and just adding it sort of around the edges, going into the center of the card, adding some darker blue on there. Then I'm going to move on to Deep Sea and blend this entirely around the edges, sort of going into the middle of the card a little bit, but not too much. And then I'm going to finish it off with Black Licorice, and this is where the magic really happens. I feel like when you add the Black Licorice, because it's not like a super dark black color when you ink blend it onto your card, all of those other colors show through underneath and it really gives that look of a galaxy. I really love seeing all of those pops of color in there, and I really loved ink blending with that Black Licorice because I felt like it blended everything together quite well but still left all of the individual colors showing through. Then to make it look even more galaxy like, I'm going to just take this Distress Sprayer bottle, and honestly any spray bottle will work, even if you just take out the nozzle and flick it on or use a paintbrush and flick on the water. Each way works absolutely fine. I just thought I would try out this Distress Sprayer. So I sort of sprayed a little bit of the water on there. I just sort of pressed the button halfway and sort of like created those big drops and some sort of like a spray effect. And then I just picked it up with a paper towel. And obviously the water doesn't react like too much with these inks, but I feel like it gives enough of a reaction to sort of look like a little bit of a bleached look. And so when you add that, it sort of looks like stars. Then I just went ahead and smushed some Yeti pigment ink down onto an acrylic block and also flicked that on there with a paintbrush, and the white really gives it that galaxy feel. It looks like lots of different stars. I really love all of the different sizes, and obviously when you dry it with a heat tool it sort of dries back just a little bit, but I still think that you get enough of the white showing through for it to really make a big difference. Then I'm just going to go ahead and work on the watercoloured version. So I've taken another piece of watercolour cardstock, placed it down on my plastic board, and then smushed down all of the same colours of lawnfawn inks onto a slick surface. This is just a plastic coated piece of cardstock, and then I'm just going to pick up the colour with a paintbrush that's super wet with water, and then I'm just dropping on the colour. And watercolouring with lawnfawn inks is something that I really love to do. I really love stretching my supplies, getting the most out of them, and so I feel like watercolouring and ink blending with, you know, your regular dye inks is a really good way to stretch them. And so basically I'm just dropping on the colour onto this background, and you can see that the colours don't really mix and move well together. They sort of don't spread out anymore once they've hit the paper, but that wasn't an issue for a galaxy background because you're adding layers upon layers of colour. So I first started off with a pink, yellow and orange layer, then dried it, added a blue layer, dried it, and then added a darker blue layer and then dried it, and then I'm moving on to the black layer. And at this point I was really concerned. I was like, oh no, it's not working, it looks absolutely terrible, but I sort of just kept going with it, kept pushing through, and I did find that when I dried it with a heat tool, it sort of dried back a little bit and still gave that, darkness of the black licorice ink to it, but it sort of made those colours sort of show through a little bit more and sort of created more of that galaxy vibe that I was going for. So you can see there that on the left is the ink blended version and on the right is the watercoloured version. I definitely prefer the ink blended version. It looks, I find, a lot better. I do really like how the watercolour background worked as well. I just felt like the colours sort of showed through and it was a bit more darker and more of a galaxy feel on the ink blended version, but honestly I think it's just personal preference. I do like both, I just preferred the ink blended version, so that's what I'm going to go for on my card today. So now that I have completed those backgrounds, I'm going to Copic colour in my images. So I've just taken a piece of Nina Solar Wet cardstock and the Out of This World stamp set and just stamped down a ton of the images I was going to use with some jet black ink from Lawnfawn, and this is a Copic friendly ink. It works super well with Copic markers and alcohol markers. It stamps really darkly and I really love it. So now I'm moving on to my Copic colouring. So I've just started off with some purple markers. So I'm using V17, V15 and V12, and I am working in the dark to light technique. I find that this is a lot faster. Before I used to work in the light to dark technique and then, going backwards as well, just to blend all those colours in together. So sort of the paper is a little bit more saturated, but I found that takes a lot of time and also takes a lot more ink of your marker. So for colour trios that I know blend really well together, I really love using the dark to light technique. It, one, makes it super fast, and two, you don't have to waste as much ink with making sure that the paper's wet before you start blending. You just sort of go straight in and all the blending's done in sort of one layer, which I think works just really well for me, and I definitely prefer it this way. But obviously if you know the colours that you're using are quite far apart from each other, don't really blend all that well and easily together, then I would definitely recommend going from light to dark and then dark to light, just so you can sort of saturate that paper with the lightest colour first, so then when you add more colour on top it sort of makes the blending easier because the paper's already wet. So I've just gone ahead basically and just coloured in a few of the images. I used to use some green for the Earth and one of the other planets, and then I'm just using some reds to colour in the accents on the astronaut's suit and also another planet. Now I'm coming in with some orange markers and colouring in this large planet here, and I really wanted to use almost all of the colours of the rainbow just because I know that technically these planets probably aren't these colours, but I really love having sort of whimsical cards and not having everything to be absolutely precise, so I really love having bright coloured planets. Then I went ahead and skipped ahead and just coloured in some of the blue on the planets, and now I'm coming in with the yellow. So for the yellow I'm using Y19, Y15 and Y13, again just going from dark to light. These colours numerically are supposed to sort of blend well together, so that's why I love using sometimes trios that are numerically close together, because I find the blending a lot easier. This Y13 marker here is actually going white at the tip. It's running out of ink, so it was a bit hard to blend this one in, but generally it blends really well. Then I'm going in with some dark sea markers, so the cool greys, and I'm colouring in some accents on the little astronaut suit as well, so his gloves and his shoes, and also the main part of the rocket. So I just started off with C7 and then I'm going to move on to C5, and I'm just sort of blending that out a little bit further, and then I'm going to finish it off with C3. And the one thing I really love about the grey markers is if you use the odd numbers they blend really well together, and if you use the even numbers they blend really well together. So generally when I'm using the C markers I always like to use like C3, C5, C7, so the odd numbers or the even numbers, and I find that you're going to get a really good blend if you sort of go numerically in that way. Now I'm just using a few browns for his hair. And then I'm moving on to use some light blues for the a couple of other planets. So I'm using B000 and B0000 for my planets. And then once all my Copic colouring has finished, I'm going to use the coordinating dies to cut them out. So I really love using coordinating dies. They make everything so super easy. I don't have to do any fussy cutting, which saves me a lot of time, a lot more time for me to be able to spend making my cards. So I'm just lining up these dies and just pressing them down into place, and I always adhere them down into place with either a little bit of washi tape or micropore tape. Washi tape sometimes does rip it up, but I like to use it on the outside of the dies so it rips the cardstock on the outside and not my image. So now that all of my images have been die cut out, I'm going to work on this panel. So I've taken the Ocean Waves dies, and I think I've used the sort of biggest waves here, and I'm sort of deciding how I want to cut this card. I was going to originally just do it straight, but I was sort of tossing back and forth between straight and at an angle. I decided to go at an angle, so I just went ahead and die cut that out. And now I've used some Starry Skies dies, and I've just sort of cut them out into two opposite corners of this panel here. And then I also did a little bit of partial die cutting just to add a few more stars in there as well. I just really love seeing how, when these stars are cut out of this background, you can sort of have the white showing through, and it looks really magical and fun. So I've just gone ahead and placed down the images where I want them to go. So I've sort of just placed them down on my card, and then once I've got the placing right, I'm going to adhere them down. And also when I'm adhering them, I am going to add a piece of twine between the astronaut and the rocket just to sort of connect those two together. I think that adds a little bit of texture and just makes the card feel a little bit more complete. I've white heat embossed the "You Are" sentiment directly onto the background. I probably should have done that before I adhered all of my images, but it worked out just fine. And then I also white heat embossed the "Out of This World" sentiment onto a black strip of cardstock, and then I just trimmed that out with my guillotine trimmer. Then I've added a white piece of cardstock behind my little galaxy background there just to have some white cardstock at the top. And then I've also adhered a piece of storm cloud cardstock to a white card base. To completely finish off my card, I've just added a little bit of Wink of Stella onto my images just to give them a little bit more sparkle and shine. So I really hope you enjoyed my card today, seeing the two ways that I made some galaxy backgrounds just using lawnfawn inks. All the supplies that I used will be listed down below and also at the blog, and I will catch you all next time. Thank you so much for watching.